Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Is the news on coronavirus front getting better or worse? Is it good or is it bad? Now, I'm not a doctor, I keep saying. I'm not a spin doctor either. So if it's good, I can't call it bad. If it's bad, I can't call it good. And whatever I do, I have to speak with facts in terms of what the facts tell us. Because my job here is to declutter, not to give you my opinion on issues as complex as science in particular and as verifiable as science. Because don't laugh at me, but if I said to you that on politics you can take chances with opinion, on science you have to be a lot more careful. So if you just looked at the data, why am I saying I'm not a spin doctor? If you just looked at the data, then it would be very easy to say that the news is bad and the news is getting worse. India just crossed 1 million positive cases. That at our level of testing is a lot, about 9,000 per million or about 10,000 per million by the time you watch it. It's very low. So 1 million is a very large number at that testing rate for our population. Number two, India's deaths have crossed 25,000. Again, if you look at the basic picture, India now has the third largest number of cases in the world and third largest number of deaths in the world. Although we are still about 1/3 of Brazil and about little more than 1/7, about 1/6 of America. Now, so it's bad, isn't it? It looks bad, but look at it differently. And I keep saying this to you in many contexts again and again, that absolutes are absolutes, percentages are percentages. So if you look at the picture in absolute numbers, India is getting worse and India is in a very bad state. If you look at this in terms of percentages or averages, again absolutes, averages, absolutes, percentages, in those terms, India probably is not doing so badly, because Brazil, which is about 1/7 of India's population, has 3 times as many dead. America, which has less than 1/4 of India's population, has almost 6 times as many dead and nearly 4 million cases, whereas India has 1 million. But also America is testing a lot more, etc., etc. But so let's in each case keep in mind absolutes and averages. So if you look at averages and percentages, I am quite convinced to say that India, the news in India is good, not bad, and it's getting better. And why is it getting better, I say? One, because we are testing a lot more than before. And second, because new treatments are now coming in. I know that there is a whole school of people who are so fatalistic, who think that nothing will ever work and this is the end of life for all of us. It's not. At any point of time, a lot more people are recovering than are getting infected in the world. Nevertheless, the fatality rate from COVID is also going down globally, but also in India. From about 3.3%, say about 3 weeks back, it's now 2.6%. And as more cases are surfacing, this percentage is coming down for 2 reasons. One, now you're having more cases, so percentage of cases that recover is higher. Fatalities you can't hide, mostly can't hide, maybe few get hidden here and there, but they also get caught. Remember, in Delhi and Bombay, there was exposures by the media, especially by the print.in, by one of my young colleagues called Anisha Bedi. Check out her stories, and that led to an audit of all deaths and all last rites at crematoria and graveyards in Delhi and Mumbai. So suddenly one day, when the average deaths were 200 or 250 a day, you got a spike of 2,000. If you look at that graphic, you can find it. That happened because of internal correction. So you can't hide deaths beyond a level. So if you see that, then fatalities are coming down. And why are fatalities coming down? One reason is this is a dumb percentage of the number of cases established by more testing. The other is that more people are surviving in hospitals, and that data is now coming out in scientific studies. So we carried a story yesterday showing international study that of the 10,000 patients they studied over March and May, the improvement was more than 30%. So I will share with you a tweet by a very well-known infectious diseases doctor in Washington DC, in fact in Maryland, on the outskirts of Washington. He heads the infectious diseases section at University of Maryland Hospital, Dr. Fahim Yunus. Please see his tweet. He tells you that there is a 30% improvement over base in reducing mortalities at the ICU level, which means this study also shows you that it has gone down from 60% to 42%, and that is May. You are now looking at July. So once again, many things have happened since then. So these survival cases are now improving. So once again, that is good news and that is better news. I am not saying it's a good thing to get coronavirus, and I will repeat this a few times. I am not saying don't wear masks, must wash your hands, must keep social distancing. See, I am also recording this outdoors because outdoors is much safer than indoors. And so because I am outdoors, I don't have to wear a mask. I don't have anybody around me, just the camera. So keep all those precautions, but see that this is not the end of life, and increasingly so as human beings are learning more. Now look at some data. If you see data, I told you that US has 1.41 lakh deaths. This is all rounded off because by the time you hear it, it will all change little bit, but these are indicative. Brazil has 77,000, India has about 26,000. Then you look at the doomsayers. Doomsayers, as I told you, they will say we are the third worst. But once again, there are percentages and there are absolutes. So there is 26,000 third worst. Now the latest alarmist view that we saw was from an Indian virologist, and I am not saying alarmist as in being wrong or fake. It may be a correct projection. In fact, I quite buy into it. He said in two interviews that I watched, one with Karan Thapar, one with Rajdeep Sardesai, that if the serological data that's available now is correct, then by this time India should have about 1.5 crore positive cases. Now all right, sounds very bad. So absolute numbers sound really bad. But if you have 1.5 crore cases and 26,000 dead, then what is your case fatality rate or infection fatality rate? Because you say 2.6% when you take your base as 1 million positive cases. When it's 15 million positive cases, then you divide that fatality percentage by 15. So your fatality percentage then comes to 0.15 or 0.16%. So think about it. That means not 1.5 person dying out of 100. That means 3 persons dying out of 2,000 of people who actually turned positive. So once again, good news, bad news, better news, worse news. You can see, I know that different people have different views, but the facts tell you that the news is good and the news is getting better. It is not the best. So that is where we stand right now on the basic figures. So what is the main equation here? The main equation is that we should now stop looking at case numbers. Case numbers are now a misleading metric. We should now look at fatality rates, because the important thing is to reduce deaths, to reduce fatalities. Now the issue with coronavirus is that this pandemic also is the most politicized pandemic in our history. It's also politicized because that's the state of the world right now. This is a very heavily polarized world. So in this situation, everything gets polarized, from a drug like hydroxychloroquine to the use of masks. Now a lot of the right think masks are useless, that this is just a flu, this is no big problem, and a lot on the left think that there is no solution, this is now imminent death and there is no answer to coronavirus. So once again, I will share with you a tweet from Dr. Fahim Yunus, who gives a little lecture to both, that look, it's neither this nor that. It's neither just a minor flu, nor is it a polio from the times when you did not have a vaccine that is bound to cripple you. It will either kill you or cripple you. And similarly, there is another tweet from him, very authoritative doctor, that says that to think that nothing, that once you recover, nobody recovers fully and almost everybody will be left with some scars or some damage is wrong. Most people will recover fully. It's only people who reach the level of the ICU who might come back with some scars. They can be on the lungs, they can be on the kidneys, they can be on the brain, depending on how each body is reacted. So it's not as if it will not leave the scars on some, but most people will come out completely unscarred. So once again, if I had spoken with you on this 3 weeks back, I would have said something very different. But now, as we are learning about this disease, about the virus, about the treatments, we are getting smarter and smarter, and we are getting less and less stupid. We are not, however, becoming less and less political. You want to see an example of that? Look at the story or saga of hydroxychloroquine. Now, I will talk of 2 or 3 things which have come up by way of medical research, which has got politicized, most of it, on treatments and prevention. So one is hydroxychloroquine. I have been saying this, that this became the most politicized drug in human history. Why? Because Donald Trump started prescribing it to the world and Narendra Modi started selling it to the world, because India has the monopoly on the manufacture of this very low tech, very humble drug. Then it has gone through many researches. One research comes out saying it works, one comes out saying it doesn't work. Then there were large researches, the recovery trial in Britain, there was a solidarity trial by the WHO, and there was also the Veterans Group trial, the Veterans Association trial in America, and as that would indicate, these are among older people. And those showed, one, that this did not have any beneficial effect, and second, that this might be having some strong side effects, even leading to death. Then more studies came out saying that no, it might work if you use it earlier, it might work if you use it, and it might not be so dangerous if you use it in lower dosages. So WHO suspended its trials, but some countries kept on using it. Brazil is using it, and certainly India is using it in early stages of the disease. It's very popular with Indian doctors for COVID care. So I quote from an article that 2 eminent senior scientists and doctors have written for the Indian Express, and I'll give you a link of that. These are Professors Seshadri, M.S. Seshadri, and T. Jacob John. M.S. Seshadri is an eminent medical endocrinologist, and endocrinologists are very important, because remember that ultimately what kills you with COVID or kills somebody with COVID, again I should not say you or me, never paint the devil on the wall, is the person's immune reaction. So ultimately the process that kills you is an autoimmune condition. So a medical endocrinologist is very important. They play a very good important role here. And second person, Dr. T. Jacob John, is an eminent virologist. So in this article they say that look, hydroxychloroquine has made several ousters and several comebacks. Now it has another comeback, and that comeback is credited to a study in Detroit. That's a study of 2,500 patients, 2,500 hospitalized patients who were given hydroxychloroquine in a control group, half were given, half were not given, and a steroid. So it's not as if some got steroids, others did not get steroids. Everybody got steroids. Half got HCQS, half did not. The survival rate among those, or the fatality rate among those who were given hydroxychloroquine, was half of what it was among those who were not given. But this was given early. So among those given hydroxychloroquine early in the treatment, the fatality rate was 13.5%. That is less than just about 1 out of 8. Those not given hydroxychloroquine, fatality rate was 26.4%, so almost exactly twice as much. This is a large enough sample, and these are patients in ages ranging from 18 to 78. So this is a very wide range, and they say that look, this tells us that in the early stages of the disease, this is a good drug to use. And they say don't worry so much about side effects. This is a drug tested in time. Its side effects are known. We know who gets it and we know how you get it. We can take care of that. Also, it is dose related. So the dose that's been tried in this Detroit study is 800 milligrams a day, that is 2 tablets of 200 milligrams each twice a day, and then the following 4 days just 400 mg, that is 2 tablets of 200 mg once a day. Whereas the dosage given in the trials was almost 10 times as much. In fact, if you look at those dosages, 16 tablets a day and then 12 tablets every day for 15 days, that's like chemotherapy. That's not like treatment. That much of any drug will be damaging anybody, particularly those in a serious or critical condition. So don't give it in critical condition. And they say that look, we have now come to a situation after the studies in China, then France. Now the French have some experience dealing with hydroxychloroquine because they've been using it for an endemic disease they are called Q fever. And they say that look, we know the side effects and we know that it's an immunomodulator, and I will come to that issue in just a couple of minutes, immunomodulator, because even after chikungunya, which is a viral disease, a lot of patients were left with very bad joint pains and swellings which had turned chronic, which were not going away. We found that hydroxychloroquine was effective in bringing it down because it modulates your immunity. So remember that, because I will come back to this. So they say maybe there is a new protocol now available, which is when a patient just reports, start with this low dose hydroxychloroquine. If it doesn't work, then you can go on to steroids, that is dexamethasone, which is the only one that's been proven in a large enough clinical trial to be effective in reducing mortalities. If that also doesn't work, then you go to convalescent plasma therapy, which has also shown a lot of promise. Now, one more thing has come in the middle of that, which is to do with immunity, but I will come to that in the next stage. Now, the other politicized thing is the interface between BCG vaccination and COVID-19. Now, there are some scientists, particularly in tuberculosis countries, a country like India. Now, there is a scientist at JNU called Professor Gobardhan Das, who's had a hypothesis, and that was just circumstantial, that if you draw a tuberculosis, a BCG map of the world, then the countries that have had universal BCG inoculation from birth for a long time have much lower fatalities from coronavirus. Now, that was seen to be circumstantial to anecdotal, and when they put out the data in an unpeer reviewed paper, obviously it was called unpeer reviewed and then seen to be unreliable. Now, they have produced a peer reviewed paper, and another group of scientists have produced another peer reviewed paper, both in very reputed journals, and you can see the links that I give you. Now, these show that there is a direct correlation, not causation, correlation between the rise in BCG index, that is the amount of years and time and universality of BCG vaccination in a country, and fatalities from it. So they almost say that every 10% improvement in BCG index leads to 10% reduction in fatalities. Now, that data is available. This is a data now that you cannot ignore, whether you like it or not. And I know that tuberculosis itself is a very politicized disease. It's also very politicized in the sense that it's a very public health heavy disease, and it's also a disease where not that much great scientific breakthroughs have happened now for some time. There is also a certain possessiveness about tuberculosis. Also, this seems to be too humble a thing to help with coronavirus, but the fact is that now that these papers have got peer reviewed and they are being talked about, further research is being carried out. So, at least 3 or 4 groups in India, including Tamil Nadu government, Tuberculosis Institute in Maharashtra, they are now using revaccination of BCG vaccine on older people to see if it might work. I know that it's facing a lot of criticism, but this is an emergency situation. We've all had BCG vaccines. To think now that if we survive this, I think I must have got it when I was 15 or something, because it started in India around that time, that if you get another one in your 60s or 70s, it might just kill you. Nothing is impossible, but I think that is a bit alarmist. So these are experiments worth trying, because there has to be a reason. Because if you look at fatalities in the world, Belgium, among the most developed, richest countries in the world, the highest, almost 870 per million. UK 670 per million, Spain 615 per million. These are rich Western European countries. Italy 580, Sweden, God's own socialist utopia, rich socialist utopia, Sweden, with such wonderful public health care, 550 per million and rising. France 450, US 430, but Brazil suddenly falls into the 300s. Why? And you can't even say Brazil is testing too little, because Brazil is testing a lot and they have a lot of cases. Brazil has BCG vaccination. Again, I am not saying correlation is causation. India, on the other hand, if you come down, is 19 per million. You can say whatever about India, even if India is suppressing its fatality figures by 50%, 80%, 90%, even then it's a fraction of what it is elsewhere. So there is a correlation. Causation is not proven, but that is why you need science now to prove the causation, because just to then go on insisting that, oh, this is not right because this cannot be right, is not correct. Which brings me to my final point. I told you I'll come back to immunity. Now this is very clear. The scientists still say they don't understand the virus. It is such a complicated, evil fellow that it doesn't reveal its true character, right? It's like dawn. Usko समझ पाना मुश्किल ही नहीं है, नामुमकिन है. It's not just tough to understand it, it's almost impossible. It's impossible as of now. Nobody's understood the virus well enough. But what you know now is, how does the virus kill you? Virus doesn't kill you by itself. The virus kills you by getting your body to kill itself. The virus turns your body on you. Ghar ka bhedi, lanka dhai, which means your body becomes a traitor against yourself, against your life, and kills itself. How does that happen? Because this virus, because it's a strange new virus, it makes your immune system react in funny ways. Now, immune system, particularly when it goes to T cells, initially you will produce antibodies, they will fight. But then your T cells will also fight. T cells are white blood corpuscles. Now, they will fight, and sometimes they get very confused and very angry, because who the hell is this fellow and where is it? I must go and fight it. So they start firing in all directions like soldiers in panic, in some situation in the dark, not able to see their enemy. So firing everywhere and ending up killing their own. That's how friendly fire casualties take place, in confusion. So your body then starts getting into friendly fire because of this confusion. That's why the two kinds of drugs which now seem to be working in saving lives are immune suppressants and immunomodulators. Now, what is the difference? Immune suppressants are drugs which just go and shut down or calm down your body's immunity processes. So, steroids, which are very cheap, which are very old, prednisolone tablets that people pop, cortisons, hydrocortisone, dexamethasone is one of those. These are normal old-fashioned steroids. So, when your body has inflammation, because when your body gets angry, when your T cells start releasing these substances to fight these invaders, those substances also include something called cytokines. Cytokines are an inflammatory marker. They lead to inflammation within your body. So, why do your lungs struggle to breathe and give you proper oxygen exchange? Because with this cytokine storm, your lungs get inflamed inside. So, when you have dexamethasone or a steroid, it goes inside and it reduces the inflammation, because it reduces your immune reaction overall, and that gives your body the time to fight back. That's why you found that dexamethasone, which is a very cheap old drug, these are all repurposed old drugs, that is improving fatality rates or reducing fatality rates almost by 1/3. It is quite logical. It's also been proven in a large clinical trial, but it's also logical. Now, if this is logical, then why should the other thing be illogical, which is the effect of immunomodulators? So, one immunomodulator has been tried for some time, and many countries have given it emergency approval. And emergency use approval is something that is done in a true emergency when there is no time to carry out long-term tests, and you have something and a proof of concept. And once you have a proof of concept, then you are allowed to use it in controlled circumstances with all the precautions and patient concern and disclosures, etc. So, the first such drug, immunomodulator, to be cleared like this was tocilizumab, on which you find stories every day that there is black marketing on tocilizumab. People are tweeting saying, my aunt needs tocilizumab, can you get me some? Or somebody saying, oh, I bought 10 doses of tocilizumab for my grandfather, but he's passed away, so does anybody want them? So, tocilizumab is one of those. That was a drug used for rheumatoid arthritis. Why? Because rheumatoid arthritis is also an autoimmune disease caused by inflammation caused by cytokines. So, if you can work on one kind of cytokines, it works on the other kind of cytokines also. So, that works once your body has already released the cytokines and goes and suppresses the cytokines. A new category of immunomodulators has now come up, and that is the drug that our own Biocon has produced. And I must say, for full disclosure, that Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, the founder of Biocon, is among our distinguished investors. In fact, you can go to our website and see the names of all the fine human beings who have invested with us. She's there. Disclosure out of the way. What is the way of functioning of itolizumab? So, this works a step before tocilizumab. So, tocilizumab attacks the cytokines after those have been released. Itolizumab works on your cells which release the cytokines to prevent them from doing so. So, what it does is, your T cells have also a receptor called CD6. So, itolizumab goes and inhibits CD6s on your T cells, which means it does not send your body the signal to produce cytokines. So, again, this is something which you use before the patient goes onto the ventilator. So, now you have a bunch of medications available, and once again, if you apply the science to it, hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine is also in many ways a mild immunomodulator, because if it wasn't, why is it used as a standard treatment for lupus, which is an autoimmune disease? Why is it used as a standard treatment for this post-chikungunya inflammations? Because it's an autoimmune condition. Why is it used for diabetes? No longer, because now better drugs are available, because diabetes ultimately is an autoimmune condition, because your body is destroying your own islet cells in your pancreas. So, there is a science to this, and that's why I am surprised that there has been such fierce attack on Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw's drug, and I would have hesitated talking about it just because she is our investor, but I do not, because it would never inhibit me or the print from writing or saying things that might be adverse to their interests, as long as they are factual. But in this case, it is science. What this drug has got is an emergency use approval. Now, this has to go through larger tests and larger trials. The small trial they have carried out so far is a proof of concept. And if you look at the basic science, and if you accept that what kills somebody, not you or me, what kills somebody is not the virus, but the ability of the virus to turn your body into a traitor against itself, which means your immune system. So, if fatalities or the serious condition or critical condition of coronavirus is an autoimmune condition, then it is logical that immunity drugs should work. which means immunosuppressants, immunomodulators, and who knows, sometimes the two in combination, and who knows, God forbid, if everything fails, then convalescent plasma. So now 6 weeks back, doctors had no ammunition, no gun to fire at coronavirus, and they were blindfolded. Today they are not blindfolded. They have a machine gun with a choice of many bullets. No bullet is a sure shot, but certainly you are much better off than before. That's why fatalities are down, and that's why I would say that by and large, generally, look at the picture, the news on coronavirus globally, not just in India, globally is better than it was a few weeks back.